The Prowler, Part 8. The sun hits my face and I awake more alive than ever. A rejuvenation is not a strong enough word to describe it, more like a rebirth. Yes, that's perfect. I feel reborn. With the sure-to-be setback of the Prowler investigation, thanks to Inspector Richard's demise, to a beautiful evening with Lady Smith, things just could not be any better at the moment. I threw back the covers and sprung out of bed, then got dressed quickly, for today I feel like fetching the paper myself. I want to hear the reactions. I want to feel the fear from the rabble as they read the news of the inspector's demise by my hand. I jumped into the waiting carriage, and we were on our way. Sitting there, I almost forgot I had just killed a man just a few short hours ago. Excellent job with the cleaning, James, I thought. There's no sign of anything. The blood is gone, the tiny chunks of flesh removed. Marvelous work. I would tell James this, but I wouldn't want such lavish compliments to go to his head now. We finally pull into the square, and when I open the carriage door, I'm greeted with a buzz that satiated my most carnivorous urges. The fear that permeated the air was thick, like the fog that rolls in on a dark London night. I pushed my way through the horde of the dismayed and disbelieved, mumbling to themselves in their confusion and panicked states. As I finally exited the mass of common filth, I hastily procured one of the last copies remaining of the London Journal from the shoddy-looking paperboy standing on the corner. Let's see what the peanut gallery has to say about recent events, shall we? Oh, and right away the headline is quite catching. Head Inspector in charge of Prowler's slayings meets own demise at the hands of the man he was trying to stop. Horrible news to report, dear readers. The man Scotland Yard pegged weeks ago to head the investigation into the Prowler slayings has met his own horrific demise. The body of Inspector Clive Richards was found discarded on the side of the road in the early morning hours. The inspector's lifeless body was found having his throat severed and an entrance wound from a blade entering one ear and coming out the other. The inspector was leaving the policeman's ball, which he and other prominent figures attended last night at Burlington Manor. The inspector was seen all through the night enjoying himself, but it is not known at this time when he left or with whom, if anyone he left with. The Commissioner of Her Majesty's West End Police Service, Nigel Burlington, whose family also hosted the policeman's ball, declined to go into detail, but did go on to express his remorse to the young inspector's family, and also expressed his own shock at the events which took the young inspector's life. He also wanted to reassure the citizens of the West End that the investigation into the Prowler will continue without delay, and a new man in charge will be appointed post-haste. We'll see who Commissioner Burlington and other top Scotland Yard officials choose to head the Prowler investigation, but whoever it is must bring this bloodthirsty Prowler to justice, and do it swiftly. In other news related to the Prowler, news of his exploits have reached across the pond to our American cousins. From coast to coast across the country, tales of his butchery have gone out to the citizens from every major newspaper. There's also been rumors of a famous American lawman asked to lend his expertise to the investigation. Famed peacekeeper Wyatt Earp is in town with his wife, and our societal columnist, Jonathan Swifts, interviewed him just last night as Mr. Earp and his wife left the old London theater. Mr. Earp was asked if the rumors were true, and he said there was no volition to said innuendo. Myself and Mr. Swifts can also report there is no truth to these rumors, as Mr. Earp, though legendary, is retired and uninterested. Until tomorrow, dear readers, stay safe. Oh my, how beautiful! What excellence! The Prowler has gone international. My reign of terror will be known far and wide. Every corner of the world will know my name. I stood there with a feeling of exhilaration, surrounded by a mass, whimpering and worried for the state of their very souls. I made my way back through the decay of society and into the friendly confines of my carriage, hastily returning back to the manor. The day's agenda was slim. The afternoon dragged on, long and boring. Dinner was not much better. Nothing noteworthy taking place. Just more dull conversation with Father regarding my date tomorrow night with Lady Smith. He's really pushing a match between our two families, and little does he know his wish might come to fruition. I was to go out tonight and procure another victim, but my bloodlust has waned, at least for tonight anyway. My mind is on other things, particularly the lovely morsel, Lady Smith. She is all that has filled my thoughts since last evening. I'm not worried, though. I know my bloodlust will return shortly. She hasn't soothed the savage beast completely. But what I think I shall do before bed is to compose a letter to leave on my next victim. I slid back the chair and sat down at the writing desk and began. I prowl the halls. I prowl the streets. I prowl the alleyways where people meet. In the shadows where I do hide, I slash my knife across your eyes. Now you are blind, nowhere to run. Just blood-red tears that blot the sun. You're dying slowly, but dead you'll be. You just met the Prowler, and the Prowler is me. I can't be caught. I will not stop. Down the streets I continue to stalk. So be on the lookout and always pray, for tonight it's you that I may slay. Perfectly composed, I must say so myself. Almost a poem of death, if you will. I shall leave this on the bodies of my future victims. Think of it as a macabre calling card. The midnight hour approaches. 'Tis getting late. I must rest now, for tomorrow is going to be a busy day. I woke around 8 and promptly got dressed for the day. After a quick breakfast, I performed my daily duties, but with always an eye pointed towards tonight. As the hours grew nearer and nearer, I grew more excited for my dinner date with Lady Smith. I was to promptly pick her up in front of Smith Manor at 7 o'clock, where from there we will dine at one of the West End's finest dining establishments, the Regal Schooner. As 6 approached, I got dressed in my finest of tuxedos. The hair was slicked, the facial hair waxed, and powders and sprays were addressed accordingly. I was a fine-looking and proper-smelling gentleman, if I do say so myself. I strapped my surgical knife in its sheath to my vest, just in case the mood strikes me later on in the evening. One never knows when the urge to kill will beckon. I then made my way down the stairs and into the waiting carriage, where I ordered James to proceed to Smith Manor at once. We made excellent time, and I was standing in front of Smith Manor at 7 sharp. I then scaled the steps and rapped on her door. A young butler named Phineas answered, and I told him Lady Smith's escort was here. He left to fetch her, and I waited in the foyer. While I waited, a voice greeted me from the parlor. It was Lord Smith, Brandy's father. We had a polite conversation while we waited. A very jovial man with a booming voice. Very pleasant to be around. Just then I looked up and saw the beauty who was my date, standing at the top of the stairs. No matter how many times I see her, she still takes my breath away. I moved to the bottom of the stairs and waited, telling her how beautiful she looked this evening. She grinned and thanked me for the compliment as she walked down the stairs towards me. I reached out for her hand and kissed it delicately, then took her by the arm and proceeded to the carriage. I told James to proceed to the Regal Schooner. As we made our way, me and Lady Smith began to converse, And even though it had been 2 days, nothing had changed. We continued on right from where we left off at the ball, and we were so enthralled in our conversation, we arrived at the restaurant before we knew it. I stepped out of the carriage and asked for her hand to help her down the steps. I then once again asked for her arm. Then we proceeded into the restaurant, where we were escorted to the establishment's finest table, away from the rest of the dining crowd. We sat by candlelight and continued our lovely conversation. We sampled the finest things from the menu, from the freshest lobsters to the rare Italian cuisine, which so happened to be Lady Smith's favorite, all enjoyed with the finest of wines. Perfect accompaniments to our conversation that was unfolding. We delved deep into our lives, getting to know one another completely and truly, and once again, there were things we found out about each other as if we had already known. Soulmates, through and through. I was beginning to fall for her more and more by the second, and more deeply in love, it seemed, by the sentence. And the best part is, it seemed as if she was feeling the same way for me. Sadly, such a beautiful conversation was only interrupted by the incompetence of some fool that the restaurant hired to be a waiter. This clumsy bastard decided to spill a lovely tomato bisque soup all over my beautiful date. The prick spilled it all over Lady Smith's beautiful turquoise dress, ruining it instantly. With her charm and grace, she laughed it off and forgave the bastard instantly, but I myself could not, and his actions of buffoonery set my blood into a boiling rage. I quickly jumped up from the table and started berating the clumsy fool, demanding his firing. I grabbed a bowl of soup and emptied its remaining contents onto his head. Just then, Brandy's hand grazed mine. I looked down and she stared back up at me with a gentle smile and said, "Everything is fine. Don't think another thought about the matter, my darling." I slowly sat back down and smiled back at her and said, "Of course, my love. We shall not worry about such things any further." In my mind, however, I looked back at the fool, and in my mind I was plotting his demise. I didn't think I was killing tonight, but after this incident, my blade is about to get bloodied once again. Not long after, we finished our lovely meal, and sadly it was time for this beautiful evening to come to an end. But before leaving, I excused myself from the table and made a trip to the men's room. I told Lady Smith I would be just a moment, for her to please wait for me at the table. She of course graciously said yes, and I made my leave. My intentions, however, were on the nefarious side. You see, after the incident, I had been keeping a hunter's eye on the clumsy bastard who calls himself a waiter. My eyes had been stalking his every movement, and I noticed in the corner of my eye he's about to make a trip to the back of the restaurant, where I'm assuming he's about to dispose of the rubbish he's carrying in his hands. I got up from the table and made my way towards the bathroom, which thankfully for me is next to the back door of the restaurant that leads out into the alleyway where the waiter just went through. I reached the bathroom door and turned my head, making sure no one was watching me. And when no one was looking, I quickly went through the back door into the alley. When I happened upon him, he was placing the rubbish up against the wall, and as he started to turn around to see who just walked through the door, I quickly pulled my surgical blade from its sheath, and as he saw it was me, I slashed it across his throat. His eyes widened as he clenched his throat, trying to stop the blood from flowing. I then took my blade and jammed it into his heart. I then removed the blade and jammed it into his forehead, killing him instantly. While he slumped down to the floor, I decided to take some trophies, taking my blade and removing his hands. The clumsy bastard didn't know what to do with them anyway. I then quickly composed myself as best I could and returned back into the restaurant. I felt somewhat apprehensive as I approached the table. I should have stopped into the bathroom to check my state in the mirror. That was an awfully bloody mess. I sure hope I didn't get any on me." I stopped and smiled at Lady Smith and asked her if she was ready to go. She smiled back and said yes. She had a lovely evening, but it was getting late, and she was becoming quite tired. I asked for her arm, and we were on our way back into the carriage, where we continued our lovely conversation, and back to Smith Manor, where I kissed her hand and bid her a good night. I asked if she would permit me to call on her again, and she smiled and said, "Yes, of course." We arranged another rendezvous in 2 days' time, and we said our final good night. I watched as she went back into the manor, then retreated into my carriage and returned home. I went to bed filled with so many emotions, still coming down from my lover's high and still recovering from my bloodlust. I have, however, come to the conclusion that Lady Smith is the one for me. When that miscreant did what he did to her, I instantly wanted to tear him limb from limb, and I did. So everyone best watch out, for Lady Smith is one to kill for. I would like to give a heartfelt thank you to the special friends of the channel for your overwhelming generosity. If you would like to support the channel, the link is below in the description. Also, please send me your stories and poems to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at duchess.ofdarkness and Twitter at duchessofdarkn2. I want to thank all my listeners for your kindness, your encouragement, and your support. It means the world to me. Thank you for joining me. Until next time.